Okay, we're back, and this is the next part of how to make Minecraft render. So this one, I left the world, and I'm just going to be showing you some basic lighting things, using just showing you with cubes and stuff. So let's just go over this. So this is a light. Um, there's a couple different lights. You may have seen in the last one we used infinite light. So this is just pretty much gonna light the area. So if I just put this down and I make it, let's just make this really big. Actually, I could have used a floor, but whatever. And we'll just put a texture on it. We'll make it white. You can see that it just lights the area, and it kind of fades off into the distance. So if I zoom out here and I render this out, you can see that it just fades off in the distance. So you would probably use this for like torches or fire or something like that. And there's a couple other things I'm going to show you that use this too. So next is a spotlight that I'll show you. Let's see, that's actually up here. Spotlight. So this, as you can see, and the name pretty much explains it. It's just a spotlight. So you could rotate this, and you could actually drag these points, and it'll make it bigger. So that is a spotlight. I'm gonna undo that and make it this again. So now let's go over some of the more complicated stuff. So shadow. There's a couple different types. I rarely ever used ray trace hard. I haven't actually used it really. Shadow map soft and area are pretty much the ones that you want to use. So if you watched the last tutorial on how to light the world, I used area light. I would only recommend using area for the infinite light for the world. If it's one of these type of lights, I would use shadow map soft. I would say that's the best way to go. There's probably not much of a change if I render this out. And I, hold on, let me remove glow. I am using the render settings with only ambient occlusion, so yeah. If we drop a cube in and we move it over, you can see that it'll like light the front, and then it'll kind of be dark on the side. And since we do have only ambient occlusion on, we need to go into shadow and change this to like 70, and now it shouldn't be as dark on the side. Or change this to like 50 even. It might just be dark just because this is the side. I think it is. Yeah, that's just dark just because it's like the side. If I were to, I'll just change this back to 70. If I were to take this and like rotate it a little bit like that, you could probably see that that side's gonna light up a little more now. Yeah, it's lighting up more. So next, this is a pretty big thing that I've seen a couple really good animators use. Blue Monkey's one of them. I'm not sure if this is what he uses, but it's the only thing I could find that is the closest. Ambient illumination. So I used this in the last tutorial, but it doesn't do the same thing as when used with Omni Light. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. So I'm going to put this texture on there. So if I go to light and I turn this on, you're going to see that everything gets really bright. That doesn't mean that everything is going to be bright like this in the render. I don't know why it does that, but if I render this out, you can see that, I guess it is bright, but you can see that the texture, or the light, actually bends around the corner of the cube. So this is used in a lot of things. So I'll just show you before too. So here's before. Just one side is lit up, just like that. There's no thing. And then if I turn this on, you can see that it does bend around the edge a little bit. So that is a really nice thing to have. And we can go over how to get it to only light one object later, so I'll show you how to do that. So I'll turn this off. Next, I'll actually go over volumetric lighting. So, well, first, just basic stuff up here. That's how to change the color of the light. This is the brightness. Yeah. So next, volumetric light. This is pretty cool. So if you go to visible light right here and you select volumetric, you get this circle. And what this does is it adds fog to the lights. So if I render this out, you can see that it's kind of like foggy, especially where this cube is. You can see that the fog is kind of, or the cube is kind of blocking it. So it's a really cool thing to use for like nighttime renders or like foggy areas, stuff like that. Is pretty cool. And if you make this circle bigger by taking one of these points and dragging it, it will take that smoke stuff and it'll drag it out all the way to the edge of the circle. So now you can see that it's really foggy. So let's undo that. There are other types, inverse volumetric. This is kind of weird. I don't really get it, but I haven't used it either. It kind of just puts smoke behind the object that should be blocking it. It's pretty much like the inverse of it. That's why it's called inverse. And then there's just visible. I think I haven't really noticed a difference between that and volumetric. It's like the same thing. So I'm going to set that back to none. If you want the light to just not make light at all, which can be useful in some, or can be useful sometimes, you can check no illumination and then uncheck show illumination, and there will be no light from that object anymore. It's light because of the ambient illumination thing, but it's not coming from this light. So that light does not, it's not making light, I guess. And this can be useful when you're doing lens flares, which I'll show you in a minute. So I'm going to turn this back on. Detail, this is cool, fall off. So if I turn the fall off to inverse square, this circle controls like how far the light gets. So this could also be useful for like torches and things like that. So if I render it out, there's only going to be a little spot of the light. And I could do this ambient illumination, and I could do this, and you'll see that it kind of, yeah, you can see that it stretches around the edge a little bit. I think it should. Yeah. So that's pretty useful. So let's go back, and I'll just turn that to none. And we could turn this off again. Visibility, not much in here. This, I'm pretty sure, is how big the volumetric lighting is, like the circle. And brightness, this is the brightness of the volumetric lighting. And then you could turn dust and dithering to 100. You don't have to, but you can. Shadow. You don't really need to mess with anything here except for the density. Or you could change the shadow color if you wanted to. This thing you don't need to mess with. That you don't need to mess with. Noise is actually cool for volumetric lighting. So if I go back and I turn volumetric on, and I'll make this like blue, like that. And I go to noise, and I change this to both, and I change it to hard turbulence. Why not? And I render it out. You'll see that the volumetric lighting, like the smoke, kind of has some wavy stuff in it. It's actually really cool. It is leaving a pattern on the floor, so if you don't want it to leave a pattern on the floor, you could just do, I think, visibility, and it should only render just the smoke with the turbulence. Yeah. So that could be pretty useful. I'll just set this to none again. And we could turn this back to none and make that way. So next, lens. This could be pretty important. So there's a bunch of lenses that you could pick in here. I'll just do Sun 2, for example. Render it out, and it'll make this lens flare thing. We got searchlight. You can also put a second one on down here. So searchlight and camcorder. We'll just go here. and you can see that it'll put a lens flare there. It's pretty cool. I will show you how to do like a sun. So if you're gonna do a sun in a world, you would just have your camera here, and you would drag this up to where the sun should be, and you'd put a lens flare on it. And here's the lens flare I would recommend. You go to glow up here, and you set this to custom, and then you click edit, and you set this to inactive, the ring, and you set the beams, the beams, and then the type to inactive, and you change this to type 3, and I think it actually is being a little weird. Let me set this to default and then go to inactive. Oops, custom. I don't know why it's doing this. It's being a little weird. There you go. So this is actually what it'll look like for you probably. If you go to inactive on the ring, and then you go to type inactive, and you set the type to 3. You could change the size. This will change the size of it. I'm gonna undo that, or just set this back to 15. Change the color to like a orange, like this, and then click OK. And when you render it out, it'll look kind of like a sun. And I will go like by this object and show you kind of. The glow kind of goes. Yeah, this isn't a very good example in this like area I have. It's better in a Minecraft world. I might show you later. Yeah, that's what I would use for a sun. Yeah, so that's why. Yeah, that's what you should use for a sun. Project. So let's get another object here. Let's say that you want only this cube, which will give like a red texture. Let's say you want only the red cube to be lit up by the light. You go to light, and you go to project, and you drag in the cube that you want. So this is the red cube, and you go from exclude to include. So now this light is only lighting the red cube. So if I render this out, only the red cube is being lit up, and if I drag this over here, you can see it's lighting it up. If I do not want it to light the cube, I want it to light everything except the cube, I could turn this to exclude, and this is going to be black, and everything else is going to be lit up by the light. This is useful because you could add a second light, and this one can include, and you can make this light a custom color, like we can make it yellow for some, or orange, I guess. It's not really going to affect it since it's there. Now you can see it's the orange light. So there we go. Now the light is only affecting that cube. The one problem with that is you can see that there are no shadows, but I'm pretty sure there's a way to fix this. You just go to this light, or this one actually, and you go to project, and you just check this shadow thing. And now if you render it out, there will be a shadow on the ground. And then you can do other things, like if you have specular on the texture. Actually, it's called reflectance now. I think that's what this is. Yeah, you have a couple options and stuff like that, but that is actually pretty much the basic of lights. One more thing, you could just go to basic, and visible in editor, you could set that to off, and then visible in render, set that to off, and that will set the light off so you can't see it at all. Let's say that you have a bunch of lights and it's really bright, and you want to like set a pose. It's going to be really annoying to like select things and do stuff in all the lights. So what you could do is set it visible in editor to off and visible to render on. So right now this light is not visible, but if I click the render button, you can see that the light is visible. So that's kind of nice. If you don't want to go to the basic tab, you could just check these things. The second one is the render, and the first one is the editor. You could also just turn the light off by clicking this check. So yeah, that is all the basics of the lights. That's pretty much all I know about them. I probably do know a little more, but it's really not that important. So yeah, in the next tutorial, we could probably start adding like cameras and doing like depth of field and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it for this video, and thanks for watching.